Obviously, I'm always joined with someone, and we have an expert panelist joining us all the way from New Zealand, and her name is Mariska de PREEZ. And I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with Mariska. Come on out.
Hello, Caroline, and to all our new and old listeners and viewers. I am very happy to be here with you today.
Wonderful. What a fantastic topic we have. Before we get into it, I want you to introduce yourself, Mariska, and just tell our viewers a little bit about what you do, and then we can get into the topic.
So, Caroline, I am a leadership development coach and partner, and I help within the leadership space. So if you are a specialist wanting to move into leadership, or maybe you are already in the leadership space and you want to level yourself up and go for that next position, that is the areas in which I work and help out. And of course, bringing a lot more humanness into our workspace. So I cannot wait to delve into this topic because, well, yes, post-pandemic, there's a lot of things that changed, not only for the children, the adults had to adapt and change as well. And I am sure that we are going to have a very rich conversation today. So can't wait for that.
Thank you, Mariska. I'm looking forward to it too. And a little bit about myself. I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, Caroline HEWARD, and I'm your host today for the show. And I help you literally bust your stress. How do I do that? I work with root cause therapy and chakra psychology, how the mind and body connects and what happens to the person physically, emotionally, mentally, behaviorally. And if you're going around saying, I'm not stressed, but you're complaining about that relationship, or you're complaining about a member of family, or you have a sickness, that is how your stress is manifesting. And I help you literally break through the chains that create the repeating patterns of that stress. And I'm offering an incredible offer, which I'll tell you a little bit about right at the back end of the show. Okay, so Mariska, let's get into the topic. Our show tonight, A Woman's Prerogative, is brought to you in partnership with E360 TV. And we are very happy to be on E360 TV because it widens how many people are going to be supported and going to be educated in what we're sharing tonight. So, navigating new normals, how kids are coping in post-pandemic challenges, part 2. Just so we can kind of get going into the topic, what's your thoughts about what the new normal is for children post the pandemic? And we're looking at post-March 2020 here. What's changed? So I do want to give our viewers a flavour of why we're going to look at solutions and what the problem is before we launch into lots of solutions. What's your thoughts on that, Mariska?
Caroline, I think from my observations, the big thing for a lot of younger people, and maybe for a lot of us, is the fact that during the pandemic space, there was a lot more isolation and we turned to smaller screens. Our world became a bit smaller. For some, not for everybody, but in general, for most people, our worlds got smaller because our attention, instead of being out in the world, went to the screen because, well, that's where we had to do things, right? We had to go to school on a PC and interact with our friends on our phones and other devices. So that really meant that our whole outlook of the world became a lot smaller. And I love the fact that serendipity in my life has a tendency to always come into play, because at the moment I'm also reading a book about how our space, physical space, actually influence the way we think and the way that we operate in the world. And when we think about using our devices, which are really helpful tools, and sticking to only those devices, we might get ourselves into all sorts of trouble. I don't know if you have ever watched the movie WALL-E.
I haven't, no. I've heard about it, but I haven't watched it yet. That's one on my bucket list. Tell me more.
Well, what the post-pandemic life and WALL-E has in common for me, in my mind, is there's a very vivid scene that I remember where people are on the spaceship and they are all operating their own little self-driving seats. And on the self-driving seat, there's a wraparound screen. And all everybody is doing is using their little wraparound screen and talking to friends and family and everybody else. But nobody is actually interacting face to face with each other. And I think to an extreme case, I know that WALL-E is a little bit of an extreme case, but that's sort of where we move to, I feel, because I have noticed people sitting literally next to one another and they're on their phones, talking to friends, talking sometimes even to each other. Why are we doing this to ourselves? So yes, it is a good movie to go and watch if ever you want to do that.
On my list already.
I have noticed some similarities, so maybe there's a warning in there for us too.
There's a lot of warnings in our movies in terms of how people cope, don't cope, and what they do, don't do, and how it overtakes them. And I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your perspective on that. And I'd like to add to your perspective in that fact that we are now in our screens. And that's what challenged a lot of people in terms of living in the cities, in smaller spaces, to move out of the cities. Certainly I was living in London at the time, and it made me not want to stay because I had a very beautiful, huge property, but it was 1/5 of a huge house. And essentially, even though it was very nice, I didn't have any outside. And I lost all my outside. And from that perspective, even though I had a very beautiful property, I was stuck indoors. And I was stuck, it was sort of, because it was quite hot that year, in a greenhouse, because I had a lot of windows. And it was very hot, very sticky. And I was stuck in the middle of the city in London and not having and not being allowed to go outside as well, because we were very strict on our restrictions. And so for children, I can imagine that would be even worse. And so there was a huge move out of the cities and into the suburbs, and a huge move away from the confined spaces into more open spaces. And at the time that we were in the lockdown, there was huge challenges for children and for the families that were all working from home to be able to work and to school the children and to do the social. It was almost overwhelmingly difficult. And so from my perspective, I saw, and I was in London, I'd been living in London for, at that point when I finally left from 1999, so in 2020, it had been 21 years. I think that's my maths right. And I couldn't imagine leaving London. I found it very difficult to consider moving out of the city until it all shut down. And I do wonder how the children cope with not going out to play and only being in the screens and being forced to be in the screens to socialize. I even saw parties on Zoom. I even had a birthday party online. I had a dance party online. And it was just a very challenging time for me, and for our children, I think, even more of a challenge. And so from the perspective of being in that confined space and being in our screens, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. Our world got smaller. We were global, and yet we became more isolated in that space. And I want to bring up a topic that is very dear to my heart, really, because it actually affected myself and a lot of other people that I knew around me that were extrovert. And that was that they were not comfortable being in front of a screen, and they became very anxious about being in front of a screen and doing their socializing in a screen with only seeing head and shoulders. And for the children, what I did see is that there was a lot of social anxiety after everything was lifted, because they didn't want to go out, because they were then almost behaviorally changed to be in the screen. And this is something that I want to explore, how our behaviors changed and what the impact in terms of our lives were in terms of that change behavior, and how can we help those children and the adults, because the adults were affected just as much, in fact not worse, because they had to make sure everything still worked for the children. So what are your thoughts about the change of behaviors for our children, and obviously our adults too, in being in the screen and in being in that confined space of not seeing friends in a physical way?
Caroline, that's such an interesting topic, because I'm still seeing ramifications from that period for different people in different ways. I had a client not too long ago that we actually needed to work through how to go back to the office because of the anxiety of being around people. And it is really, really difficult when we have interactions, but also have isolated ourselves so much from others that we don't really necessarily want to interact with them. It feels scary to interact with them. And if thinking about children, this is formative years. This is years in which we learn how to act in society, how to play with other people, how to create with other people in different spaces, and even find ourselves as human beings, what we like, what we don't like. Now, if I'm not exposed to a wide variety of different things, how will I even know what I like or don't like? It's really difficult. So being able to not have those interactions with other human beings makes it really tricky. We go into a little bit of a Jungle Book scenario where we have bears and lions that we play with, but no other humans. So we don't know what to do with other humans, making it really, really tricky. And of course, then, as you mentioned, all of these other psychological things pop up, and we see a lot more of it within different spaces. So whether you are a child, a young adult, a more mature person in your life, this would have had a very, very big impact on all of us. And for some of us, not a big problem, because maybe we feel that we are more introverted. And even when we are more introverted, we are a social species. So it is important to have that human connection, which we can only have when we have other humans in our vicinity.
I'm like nodding here, and you can see I'm so in agreement with everything you're saying. And I've certainly spoken to people, and it's been a journey of moving them through the cognitive behaviors. And literally, it's called cognitive behavior therapy. And literally getting them to open up as to what the fear is that's coming up for them, what the trigger is in going outside and in socializing in larger groups. I've had people say, I don't do any teamwork anymore. I just meet one or two people and one or two other children that I like to play with. And so this is a behavior change. And cognitive behavior therapy looks at the behavior and how it affects you, and what would be better to do in terms of a better experience. And it also explores your feelings and emotions, as you would know, Mariska, from your work. But, you know, sort of cognitive behavior therapy is a very quick way to explore the behaviors that are causing us challenges and to be aware, because you can only change behavior when you're aware of how you're responding and the negative impact. And there's lots of cognitive behavior therapy therapists out there, and both of us do CBT, as it's known in the trade. Cognitive behavior therapy is shortened as CBT. And from that perspective, it's an exploration of how the child is being affected, what it's bringing up for them, and to look at the upsides and the downsides of that experience, and to look at something else that they'd much prefer to feel and experience. So it is like a toolkit. What are your thoughts on cognitive behavior therapy, Mariska?
Caroline, I have found, I have found that it is a very effective tool. And of course, it is helpful for us to first become aware of whatever the behavior is that we are exhibiting. And as you mentioned very early on in the show, sometimes we think, oh yeah, I don't get enough sleep, or I have this one thing that it's nothing, right? I get irritated with people so easily, so I'd rather not interact with them, or whatever the case might be. And yes, is that necessarily where you want to be in your life? Is that the way that you want to show up and create in your life? And almost understanding that we can change that. We don't have to stay in a space where we feel anxious or scared or whatever other feeling is coming up, frustration or even apathy, not feeling anything, right? We don't need to stay in that space. We can create a full life for ourselves, and understanding how to do that. Cognitive behavioral therapy really, really helps to get us out of that space and into a space where we can actually thrive and build the life we want, instead of, well, almost hiding in a corner and hoping that life just goes by.
I quite agree with you. And it's the thoughts that create the feelings that then create the behaviors. So if you're thinking that stressful and that anxiety that's going, because this is what happens, the head becomes very full and the thoughts go round and round. And if you're thinking about future things, that will be anxiety. If you're thinking about past things, that's depression. And very rarely are you actually in the present moment. So you can't feel anything. When you're either in the past or the future, you're not actually experiencing life, you're existing. And so the idea to move out of that space of anxiety, stress, or indeed that place of fear, you know, of the unknown, you know, and the precursor to anxiety is worry. You know, so even if you're worried and you're not thinking it's, you know, the full-fledged anxiety, if you are worried about something, that means that you're preoccupied in your thoughts. And when you stay in your thoughts for a long enough time, they then create the feelings that then create bodily actions in terms of how you experience that thing that you're thinking about. And therefore, you can actually experience all that negative stuff that you're thinking about. And so my personal experience with clients is that they're either thinking about past stuff, and a lot of our children are in the past and in terms of the fear that they were experiencing, and they're also in the future of, you know, what life have I got now? And they're very much focused on how are they going to get through it, and how they can't see, some of them, a future. And from my perspective, and it is a good perspective to have, is to go into the present moment. And this is the place that change can happen, to move into the present moment. If you're not sure about how to do that, is to literally go into your senses. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you hear? What do you feel? And the feel is not sadness, loneliness, heartache. Feel is, how does the wind feel in your hair? How does the sun feel on your face? And when you actually go into a sensory experience, time goes quickly, there's no thoughts, and anxiety disappears. And it's only in awareness. What are your thoughts about that, Mariska, in terms of in awareness? This is where, as a child or even a young adult and a mature adult, we can change how we're experiencing anxiety or stress.
The tools you just mentioned are more powerful than I think most of us realize. And they are literally at your fingertips. They are available to anyone, and it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of consistency, and we can bring ourselves into that space really easily. And that is definitely one of the biggest things that we start off with when I work with clients around these type of things, because it's so easy and it doesn't cost you anything. You don't need to go and pay gym membership or whatever else out there. You can literally only use your body and you there. It's such a great way of practicing these things. And I love the feeling. So depending on what sensory part of yourself is the most, I almost want to say heightened, because we all have something that we enjoy best, right? We really enjoy tasting things, or we really have good hearing. We can hear the slightest sound, or we love touching stuff. Now, for me personally, I love touch, right? I'm a touching person. I cannot go into a fabric shop and walk past a piece of fabric and not feel it. I love feeling things.
I'm the same. Especially in a toy shop, I'll be pressing the buttons, with the little toys to find out what they're doing, so I can hear them and I can see them and I can. So I totally agree, and that's very childlike. And
it
when
is.
you're in that sensory experience, you're really in the present. When you're feeling and smelling and touching, you're really in that moment of the moment that you're in. And then all anxiety and stress that you might feel and fear that you have been experiencing in your mind literally disappears, doesn't it? It's like there's no time, there's only the experience that you're actually in that moment. And I love your thoughts about doing something that you enjoy. For me, as you probably are aware, it's dancing. Put on your favorite record. And this is something that I recommended to a young boy who had tried a couple of times to end his life. And his mother called me and she said she was absolutely beside herself. She was in the hospital. She said, I don't know what to do. He was 11 years old. And I had a consultation with him, and it was an audio consultation on the call, on a phone call. And essentially he said, I don't see a way forward. And so what I did was I got him to think about things that he enjoyed. And suddenly his mood changed. And he likes sports. And he said he liked to play with his friends. And I could feel his mood completely lift. And so if you're then thinking about things that you enjoy doing, something changes. And I also got him to focus on future things. What would he like to do when he left school? Did he have any aspirations of a particular career he'd like to explore? This is a young boy, 11. And so he was thinking about something that he wanted to do when he left school and got his exams. And suddenly, in the space of that hour that we were together, he was feeling differently. And the feedback that I had from his mother, that he was hopeful and future experiencing, planning for the future, planning for what he wanted to do when he left school, and he was just 11. And that to me is the short, positive way to move from that place of anxiety, stress and fear and focus on what you want, you know, a place of being inspired to achieve something and to become a certain person in your career and to deliver a service to others and to do something. And this particular young boy, he wanted to do football. He wanted to be a professional footballer. And I says, well, you know, you have everything here, you know, to practice, to play. And he really got, he said, oh, I haven't got the skills. And, you know, they stopped all of the groups. I says, you will research and you will find one group that will meet. It might be a few friends. And then when you're playing, you'll be seen. But this is where it goes. I call it baby steps. 1 step, 2 steps. You can't solve a mountain. It will be in baby steps. What are your thoughts on what I've just shared, Mariska?
I love the baby steps. It's when we look at the mountain, it feels overwhelming. It feels too big. And a lot of people, a lot of the time, cannot see how to scale it. They see the mountain and then just give up. And it's because we haven't really thought about, okay, so how do you actually scale a mountain? You don't just stand at the bottom and then appear at the top. It doesn't happen that way. It's the same way you would eat an elephant. Preferably 1 bite at a time. You don't eat the whole elephant all at once. And that's what we need to do with what it is that we want to accomplish and go for in our future, whether this is a physical thing that we want to move towards or whether this is a way of being that we want to move into. Breaking it down into those smaller steps, those bite-sized pieces, and then move to it. Take that very first step. I remember in Lord of the Rings, I think it is Gandalf that reminds Frodo that adventure is but the first step out of your door.
Oh, I love that.
So take that first step on your life adventure and you never know what you will be able to create. That's the fun of living.
And we are humans. And
Exactly.
we are here to experience sensorily. We are here to experience our sensory experiences in what we do. I use an example with some people when they say, explain what experience, you know, how you experience more. And I throw it back to them and say, I've never had a cup of coffee. Can you explain to me what it tastes like, what it makes you feel? And it's very difficult to describe and explain because I don't like coffee. It's too strong for me and it gives me a headache. And so my description would be different because my experience would be different. And then I give the analogy of when you're on a ride, a fairground ride, like a roller coaster. You know, if I describe that, I'd say, well, it goes very slowly and it goes up to a really big height. And then you go whoosh and I scream. And at one of the roller coaster rides, I lost my sandal and I screamed and I wasn't sure I was going to get it back. Well, that was my experience. And an experience is exactly that. It's an experience. And we are here to have a human experience. And when we're thinking and analyzing and in the space of anxiety and fear, we're on autopilot and we're not living, we're existing. And if you are feeling like that, there are many places that you can go to. In schools now, they have a safeguarding centre in the schools and in colleges and in universities where you as the child can go to those people and they will give you help and advice and encouragement, and they will help you at the times that you are having difficulties. Because especially at exam time, and we are around that time now, aren't we, with children having their exams and the children that missed exams because they were in lockdown, I feel it's very, very important to know that there are people that if you reach out, that will help you. There's many organisations, and there were different organisations in different countries. In the UK, we have the Samaritans, we have JACALYN, and we also have all the safeguarding departments within schools and all the educational facilities, and also the youth facilities. In New Zealand, what kind of facilities do they have, Mariska?
Well, there's quite a wide variety, and as you mentioned, the safeguarding, we've got a little bit of a different term for them within our space, but there is spaces within the school that you can go to, specific people that help out with any of the mental health related things that we might go through. And that's the thing about that space. If we hurt ourselves physically, so say for instance, I broke my arm, everybody can see I broke my arm, right? It's easy to see. But if I hurt something inside of me, if something inside of me isn't quite working the way that helps me to function optimally, other people can't see it until, in all likelihood, it is almost too late, as you mentioned with the 11-year-old. And that's why it is really important. If you feel that something isn't quite right, speak up about it, because then we can get you the help that is required in order to help you to function optimally and have a full life, live life, have those experiences that Caroline talked about. Because yes, that's what life is about. We are here to experience, and your experience and somebody else's experience are going to be different. I love coffee. So the way that I'm going to describe coffee, true to form, Caroline's going to be very different to the way that you describe coffee.
Absolutely.
Because we experience it differently. Same cup of coffee, different experience. So you will have your unique experiences, your unique take on life. And that is such an important, rich, special thing for every human being on this planet. Because through all these different experiences, we create a bigger whole. And that, to me, is part of the awe of being alive. And if you are not in a space where you can fully experience, speak up in order for others to help around you. People want to help each other, and we can only do that when somebody raised their hand to say, hey, I need it. Because otherwise, literally, we don't know what's going on in other people's inner beings, right? I don't know about you, but my X-ray vision has not quite developed that far yet.
I hear you. But if you are afraid and uncomfortable or feeling a bit embarrassed, you know, that everybody else around you seems to be getting on with things and you're not, and you're feeling fearful in speaking up about how you're feeling, there is online chat groups, there's online therapy, online counsellors that you can reach out, and in schools, colleges, universities, they will give you access to these resources where you can talk to them even in the middle of the night, even when it's midnight, 1 o'clock, 2, 3 in the morning. If you're up studying but you can't study because the words are just not going in and you're focused on the fact that you're not going to get through the exam because you can't take anything in, and then all that anxiety comes up. It's important to know that there is always somebody that can help you, even in the wee hours in the morning. And even if you're uncomfortable in an audio call, there is online resources where there will be trained counsellors that will be there to support you when things get challenging. There is always a way out, and it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means, because we do have a mental health pandemic, and we have a lot of post-traumatic stress in our children and in our young adults. And I feel it's important to know that there is resources and there are people that understand what's going on for you and how you're not coping. So it's important to know that you can reach out, that other people are there. And it's important to understand that it's okay for you to say, I'm not okay. What are your quick thoughts on that before we end our show? We've gone through our show very quickly, haven't we? I can't believe
indeed.
we're at the end of our show. But what are your thoughts on what I've just shared just now?
Well, Caroline, I absolutely agree that it can feel really tricky to put our hand up, because we might feel scared. We might feel embarrassed. We might feel that this is something that's only happening to me and nobody else on the planet would quite get what it is that's going on for me. And the only way to really find out is to speak up, and is to ask for help, even if the help is something small like, you know what, just give me a hug. I just need somebody to hold me right now. Understanding that we need that little bit and stepping closer to that. And that's one of the other reasons why, for me, being able to step away from our devices and our screens are so important. And sometimes just spending time in nature. If you don't want to spend it with a human being, spend it with an animal. They, as well as plants, are so welcoming and always forgiving for whatever happens around us. I remember my dog definitely saw loads of tears when I went through my teenage years for a variety of different reasons, and my cats sometimes still do. So if you feel that the human isn't the thing, get an animal or a plant that might be helpful. And there's different ways in which we can overcome this. So Caroline, I absolutely agree with everything that you said. Very wise person in the midst.
And you too. And I want to share something that hasn't come up in our conversation. We could go on, but one of the big things when you're feeling anxious is that we tend to breathe in a really shallow way. We tend to breathe up into the chest area. And then the anxiety and the fear and the stress become worse. And my invitation, and it really is that, is to breathe down into the belly, to literally push the belly out using muscle and breathe slowly and gently into the belly and breathe out gently out through the mouth. And that will change very quickly. Within about 5-6 breaths, you will feel calmer and you will feel better. You will feel okay again. And when we're stressed, we naturally stop breathing. We catch our breath and we almost don't breathe. And so my invitation is, when you feel that intensity of anxiety, to breathe. I know that might feel a bit strange because we feel anxious, and so we hold our breath, we catch it, we hold it, and then the anxiety and the stress becomes worse. Is to breathe into the belly, push the belly out and breathe the oxygen into the belly and slowly breathe out through the mouth, and that will calm down the mind and that will help you navigate the stress and the anxiety that you are feeling in that moment so that you feel more normal. Well, we are right at the end, so a very quick Mariska. I hope that you've enjoyed this show. Mariska, please do tell our viewers how they can reach you.
You can reach me via email or alternatively via my LinkedIn. So my email address is mariska@journey2discover.com. And of course, on LinkedIn, you can find me under Mariska D. For some odd reason, LinkedIn doesn't like my surname. So that is the ways that you can find me. If you are a specialist wanting to move into leadership or a leader already in that space and you want to move up and bring a little bit more humanness into your space, do reach out and we can start our conversation.
Thank you, Mariska. And for me, you can reach me on nomorestress@live.co.uk or call me. And I am really approachable by phone, especially if I'm free. I'm going to pick up that call anytime. You can reach me if you're international +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. Remember, nomorestress@live.co.uk is my email. I'm also on the social media platforms. My favorite platforms are Facebook and LinkedIn. Drop a message there. And you can also drop a message, especially tonight's show. Drop a message in the comments under the shows, either on YouTube or on social media, so that we can reach out. If you need help, there is no need to suffer in silence. There is lots of resources. We haven't covered anything like what there is available. We've only scratched the surface of what's available. There is no need for you to suffer in silence. I promise you, life is for living. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Mariska. It's been an amazing show. We could do part 3 and part 4, part 5, can't we? And thank you, Mariska, for sharing your skills and sharing your tips and inspiration. And a very, very special thank you to our viewers that are here on the live and the ones that are joining us on the replay. And remember, we are here again, same time next week, Mondays, British summertime. We are still in British summertime here. It's 7 o'clock for part 1, A Woman's Prerogative, and 9 p.m. British summertime for part 2. And I look forward to seeing you next week on Monday for parts 1 and 2. And now over to our sponsors. A very, very big thank you to our loyal viewers and our viewers that are here from E360 TV. And I look forward to seeing you. Have a wonderful week. Take the tips and run with them, whether you're a kid, a child, a young adult, or even a mature person. What we've shared tonight is going to help you and change your life for the better. Bye-bye for now, and over to our sponsors.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents our partner and sponsor, Mr. Philip Sykes and the British School of Excellence. Building confidence, changing lives. And now, proudly presenting the Polished Professional.
On a transformative journey with the British School of Excellence's comprehensive suite of masterclasses, crafted to elevate your professional and personal life. 8 outstanding modules will elevate you to the next level. Module 1, Exploring Life's Purpose, delves into the depths of self-discovery, guiding you to chart your unique path to fulfillment and success. Module 2, Mastering Professional Presence and Confidence. This masterclass is a deep dive into the art of self-assurance and commanding presence, which is essential for standing out in today's competitive landscape. Module 3, Learn the Secrets of Visual Impact, how to curate a personal style that amplifies your professional brand. Module 4, Mastering Professional Etiquette and Communication Excellence, navigating the nuances of corporate interaction with grace and tact. Module 5, Elegance in Eloquence. We impart powerful techniques to captivate and persuade any audience with your oratory skills. Module 6, Unlock the Potential of Your Emotional Intelligence, EQ, and harness the ability to connect, empathize, and lead with emotional savvy. Module 7, Mastering DISC, building a gateway to understanding behavioral styles, fostering better personal and professional relationships. Module 8, Mastery in Dining Etiquette. Building your confidence to perfect the subtleties of dining with finesse, enhancing your social savviness at any table. Step into the Polished Professional program where poise, elegance, and excellence aren't just taught, they're instilled for life. Join us to redefine your potential and polish your professional edge.
To learn more, go to thebritishschoolofexcellence.com. The British School of Excellence are investors in people. Let us invest in you. This program has been brought to you in part by Zane Carson Carruth, etiquette and protocol expert, international award-winning author, television show host, and philanthropist. Thank you to Zane, our official diamond sponsor for USA Global TV and Radio in partnership with E360 TV. Zane is the author of The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever, as well as many other children's books. She's also the television host of Elegance, Polished Demeanor, and Posh Living, seen on USA Global TV and Radio.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Carruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating warm memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book, Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
To learn more about Zane, contact her through her website, zanecarruth.com, ZANECARRUTH.com. Order Zane's books and merchandise. Contact her about being a keynote speaker at your next event.